Check 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2.
Check.
Check 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3.
Yeah, Travis, 3P. Yes, I do.
And I'm feeding audio right now. Oh, it is? Okay. Okay, good. And good evening, and we will start our candidates forum in about 4 minutes, starting at about 7 o'clock, and we thank you for joining us online.
My cousin? Yeah.
Could the council candidates please come to the front?
We are just about 2 minutes away from starting this evening. Thank you for joining us on YouTube,
Yeah.
on KORNradio.com. Please stay with us throughout the evening. We'll be ready to start here in very short order. Thank you.
What is that for?
Billy Larkins.
Oh.
Play.
My fingernails are so thin from having
Didn't look at there's that many.
How many do you need? Two?
I could please.
No, coming in. 1 minute.
And they're getting stuck at the stoplight at Walmart.
Oh, there you go. I think on this end right here, Billy Larkins. It was,
Is it flashing?
yeah.
See, we're on. My daughter sent me something.
I got too many strips of those.
Oh, yeah.
I said, how you know? School.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Graduated.
Yeah, you can see what it is.
She was a ham and cheese omelet girl.
You know?
Well, I might need one of those.
I'm gonna leave it up here then.
Okay, thanks.
You want it?
So you probably just slide around a little bit.
I got it. Thank you.
Anyone who worked at West
If you have any questions, I'll call you.
didn't know
I'll
who.
stand by.
Still been the social aspect.
Recruiting?
Excuse me?
What is she doing?
She is here. We can't even just took her here.
Just was she recruiting before that? I thought she was working on that. Yeah.
And that.
I just take turns.
We'll wear one tonight.
Different place completely.
I should get some pictures and send it to Kat.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's forum. I'm Susan Kipke. I'm the chairperson of the Chamber Governmental Affairs Committee. Excuse me. I will serve as moderator tonight. These forums are intended to provide information to the public. Any opinions expressed here tonight are not that of the Mitchell Chamber of Commerce. Jim Matthews, also of the Governmental Affairs Committee, will be the timekeeper. There are Governmental Affairs Committee members in the crowd. If you just wave your hand. Two back there, okay? If you didn't receive a white card and want one, raise your hand. If you have a white card and have a question, raise it up in the air and they will pick those up for you. Tonight we'll hear from candidates running for Mitchell Mayor as well as Mitchell City Council. Our media panel tonight includes Billy Lurkin from KMIT and JP Skelly from KORN. Before we start, we would like to thank Mitchell Technical Institution for the use of their facility and KORN for live streaming. We will start with opening remarks. Each candidate will get 2 minutes. We will then move on to questions from the media and from the audience through the media. We will not be passing around a microphone tonight. There are pencils and note cards available. I did that. If you have a question, please write legibly. And then again, raise your hand so one of the committee members can pick that card up. We will review the questions for duplication and then hand them over to the media. We ask that you write your questions so that all candidates may answer the question. Don't single out one candidate with your question. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. There will be 5 questions. The timekeeper will hold up a sign when there are 30 seconds remaining, then 10, then stop. If you don't stop, a little bell will ding. We ask the candidates to honor the time frame because we have 5 council candidates and 4 mayoral candidates. So we'd like to keep it moving as well as possible. We'll end with closing comments for 90 seconds. We ask that everybody be respectful of one another and that audience members limit side conversations as they are very distracting. Candidates, please speak directly into the microphone. Please turn off your cell phones or set them to vibrate. Let's get started. We will start with Mr. Goldhammer.
You just turned it off.
All right. Well, I just want to start by thanking the Mitchell Chamber and the news organizations that are present and all of the voters for coming out to this and becoming engaged and informed, not only about myself, but also the other candidates up here. I think that's one of the most empowering things a citizen can do is stay informed on all the different things going on in their city. And I look forward to continuing to work, either whether I'm elected or not, to engage the city council and the people of Mitchell and represent their interests going forward. And I appreciated the opportunity to even run in the race. And I thank you again.
Okay, Mr. Sabers, please.
I'm Dan Sabers. Want to introduce myself a little bit. I got a wife, naturally, Jackie, 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. I've been involved in Mitchell. I ran Lakeview Golf Course when I came to Mitchell in 2008. I ran that for 7 years, and then I was at the Corn Palace for roughly 9 months. So I have a little bit of a background on city, what goes on. You know, I was a department head for a while. I think that's a huge advantage for me. I understand some of the problems they go through. I have no really, I don't have any real things I'm pushing for. Naturally, the lake issue is huge on everybody's mind. I'm a proud member of Mitchell Main Street and beyond. I'm a business owner downtown. I'm in favor of the bid tax, and that's about all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Loneman, please.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for everybody coming out here. I'd also like to say thank you to Tim for also running. You know, it's great to get younger blood out into the race and whatnot. A couple of things that I'd like to focus on here is the same thing as last year that I ran on. I spent 400 hours at the police department as an intern. I know a lot of the issues with the public safety that goes on here in town. Also, I've spent 400 hours working with the fire and EMS side of things in Mitchell, and I know the core issues of public safety that we see. I also know some of the issues having to do with public safety with the lake, infrastructure, and how many different things that we need to work on in our school districts for public safety and things like that, in which the city can help with. Also, I'd like to focus on planning for the future. We don't have a decade plan out yet. That is something that I would like to work on if I were to be elected to city council. Something that needs to be worked on in that aspect is working with local businesses and regional influencers to be able to create a plan that we can move forward with and stay on track with and be able to compare ourselves a decade from now and see what we've done in the city. Thank you.
Mr. McCardle, please.
My name's Kevin McCardle. I'm the Ward 2 City Councilman at the present time. I'm married. My wife Catherine's in the audience. I have 3 children, 2 in middle school, 1 in college. I was born in Mitchell. I was educated in Mitchell. I've lived in Mitchell for 54 years of my life. I care about Mitchell, plan on retiring in Mitchell. My first year on the council has been great. I want to continue to keep Mitchell moving in the direction it's going. I think we're heading in good places. Another thing we need to work on is, I think the main thing we need to concentrate on is the infrastructure in town. There we have pipes in town here that are 100+ years old, cast iron, clay pipes. We need to worry about stuff that we don't see as much as things we do need to see, and we need to keep working in the right direction to get that stuff done. And my first year on the council, I've enjoyed it. That's why I decided to run again, and I want to continue to have Mitchell going forward in the right direction. And that's all I have to say.
Ms. Emmy, please.
I'm Debbie Emmy. I am a mom, a wife, and a mom of 3. I have 2 at Longfellow, 1 in the middle school. So I'm going to be here in Mitchell for a long time. I come from Coleman Egan, which is a little town south of Brookings. I do have small town values that I do believe that the big city of Mitchell can involve in. I am a PAC 75 committee chair for our Cub Scouts. I am a Girl Scout troop leader. My current troop is the 4th grade girls. So I have girls from John Paul, Longfellow, Gertie Bell, LB Rogers, and the Mitchell Christian School. I do believe leading our youth into the future is just what the city needs. I am all about branching towards the future. My main focus is the limited spending. We need to more actively involve our lower income families. I am very, very passionate about bringing more financial ability or lower paying costs for activities to our youth. That is our main point of our city, and that's going to be the main focus. I see more things happening. There's not really a place for our children to go. And we just need to be focused. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first question, JP, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, candidates. What are your thoughts regarding the Mitchell Main Street and Beyond Business Improvement District plan to raise money for improvements along Main Street?
We will start with Mr. Sabers, please.
The Mitchell Main Street and Beyond, I am a building owner on Main Street, and if my calculations are correct, I'm the 2nd highest evaluation on Main Street, and it's going to cost me, by my calculations, $2,500 a year. But I'm strongly in favor of it. If we want to build our Main Street, the businesses need to step up and show we want it. We want the city to spend money. We need to spend money. It's from I don't know if it's all finalized, but the money that the bid goes back into the building. You saying I'm done? Sliding me the wrong way. And so on Main Street, me as a business owner, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loneman, please.
I would definitely say that if the business owners choose to be a part of the district or the BID downtown, that would definitely be something I would be in favor of. But I also understand if business owners don't want to do that. I think that as a city or as a business owner on Main Street, that personally, if I was there, that I would want to do it. But I also understand that everybody is different, and that everybody who is a voter or anybody who is a business owner downtown would want to express their opinions on it or not be forced into something that they don't want to do, as we can see through the petition that was presented downtown this week. I'm in full support of both sides of this argument. I think that if we do want to do something with Main Street, that the business owners should be the forefront of that. But maybe there is another idea out there, and maybe that idea is going to be presented by those petitions. See that. So that was just something that I think about constantly in reference to this. Now, that being said, I'm in favor of improving our Main Street, but I'm just not entirely sure that everybody's on board with it.
Mr. McCardle, please.
As we can see across the nation, Main Street's across the United States are all, I mean, they're dying. And I'm for having a downtown Main Street. Like I said, I've lived here my whole life. I've shopped on Main Street. I like having Main Street's an important part of your community. You need to have a good Main Street to keep the town going. And with the bid district, I think that we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. They're sending votes out for all the business owners or property owners to find out how they feel about it. But I feel we should keep Main Street going as strong as we possibly can, because without a Main Street, your town starts to dwindle and fall apart. And I think we need a Main Street in Mitchell, South Dakota. So I'm for it.
Ms. Emmy, please.
I've been hearing a lot about the bid. Here again, it's all about the finances. I do understand on how many businesses don't want to incorporate this, just because look at how many businesses are failing downtown. There might be other options that we can look at in order to improve our Main Street. It doesn't always necessarily mean that we have to tax people, because if they consistently are getting taxed, guess what? The prices go up. And when the prices go up, guess what? That means less shopping. So actually, I'm not in favor of the bid, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Mr. Goldhammer, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so in favor of the bid that I actually reached out to some members of the committee to see if the area community theater is a part of it, and if that was something that we would have a vote in. As the board president, I am very in favor of the downtown community. I think it plays a vital part in Mitchell. The community values that our citizens have are seen in downtown Mitchell. I think Jeff said it really well at the city council meeting that this tax represents what a lot of people would pay if they were in a mall or if they were in other places that would have some kind of extra fee to do the common areas, the places that your customers would go before or after they come into your shops. And so I think it's great that so many of the downtown businesses have said that they want to support this. And I think a lot of the outcry for people who don't support it are the people that aren't invested in Mitchell and the people that are property owners outside of town. So I absolutely support the downtown bid.
Thank you. Billy, do you have a question?
Yes. Good evening, candidates. What would you like to see done with Lake Mitchell, and is there a cap as to how much you think should be spent?
Mr. Loneman, please.
One of the things that I'd like to see done with Lake Mitchell is just to finally get a concrete plan on what's going to go on here. I've heard a lot of people say that they're not willing to spend more than $50 million, and I would have to resonate that thought. However, there is a public safety aspect that isn't being talked about here. After talking to several engineers and just having a public safety background like myself and being a deputy sheriff elsewhere, something to think about here is that when you talk about our lake, we're not talking about it as a water source anymore. And we should be talking about it as a future water source or a potential water source if that comes up. If something happens along the river or along the dams of the river, or some sort of oil spill happens along the river is no longer our water source, and the Lake Mitchell becomes our water source. That is something we need to think about when we're talking about dredging the lake and potentially using the lake for the future. And I think that's being left out here. So I'm not firm on a $50 million limit if it means that we can safeguard our water supply.
Mr. McCardle, please.
First of all, I think in a couple weeks or in a month or so, when fire comes back, we need to know what the real costs are going to be with the lake, because I've heard 7 million, 20 million, 30 million. I mean, it's hard, and we have a budget that we got to live on, and we have to know what the price of it is to see if we can really afford it, or if it is in the budget. And I've been going out through my ward, going door to door, and there's a lot of people talking about they want to say in what goes on with Lake Mitchell. And I think it's, we need to educate the people of the city of what's really going on with Lake Mitchell, because it's about 650, 700 acre lake. It's got anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million cubic square yards of sediment in it. I mean, it could cost anywhere from, who knows what it's going to cost, but I think that educate the people, let them vote on it and see what happens. That's my stand on it.
Ms. Emmy, please.
With the lake issue, we need to figure out what the problem is first. Why is it becoming this deteriorated? In parts, we need to have the check and balance system going in, what the true cost is going to be before we actually make any type of decision. And yes, I do believe that taxpayers should ultimately have the final say so. And if we go through on dredging the lake and what the cost is going to be to each taxpayer. Because in some families, that extra $15 a month might actually cost them 3 gallons of milk. And I have to speak. I live paycheck to paycheck, so I understand their struggles. So it is ultimately up to the taxpayers if they want to finance this project.
Mr. Goldammer, please.
Absolutely. I think if I had my way, we'd triple the fish population. We'd make the water swimmable, and it would be the best lake in the world. What financial constraints does that pose? That's really the only question that's left. I've been walking around in Ward 1, and I don't think I've met one person who hasn't said you need to do nothing about the lake. Everybody wants to do something, but it's just all about the dollars, and I think that's the truest thing that we have to figure out. I think that Mitchell has a Great Lake potential, and it brings people to our community. And so I think we need to look at it from a cost perspective. What cost to what value does the lake bring? If the lake can bring people to our community who are buying meals, who are buying supplies, and who are buying things, and we can generate revenue that we can tax, then that has potential for us to recoup the costs. And I think that's the biggest thing, is what's the cost going to be? But I absolutely think we need to fix Lake Mitchell.
Mr. Sayers, please.
You know, I think Lake Mitchell is like the Corn Palace. It is part of Mitchell. It's very important to the city. Everybody wants to fix it. You know, the problem is finding the right fix for it and then paying for it. So naturally, I think we should come up with the best plan possible and then put it to a public vote. And I can live with the public vote. I can see where it needs to get fixed. You know, I drove around it. I seen the smell. Everybody wants the lake fixed. And once we get a plan, I can just live with the public vote. I think the public vote is needed.
JP.
How important is the Corn Palace to Mitchell's economy, and what are your thoughts about supplementing the Corn Palace budget out of the city's general fund?
Mr. McCardle, please.
The Corn Palace is, you know, the cornerstone of Mitchell. I mean, everybody, if you tell somebody you're from Mitchell, South Dakota, they'll say, oh, the Corn Palace. So Corn Palace has, I mean, it's something that we have to keep. We have to maintain it. It's expensive to maintain, but I think we need to maintain it to keep, you know, it brings people into town. Where I work, I get people coming in all the time and they'll say, is the Corn Palace worth working at? I said, yeah, tell them where it is. They go down and look at it. Some people come back and say, you know, that's amazing. We've never seen anything like it. It's good. It's going to help our downtown. You know, we're worried about downtown shrinking up. We need to get people down there. And I think the Corn Palace is definitely the #1 tool to get people downtown. Without the Corn Palace, I think downtown would really be in trouble.
Ms. Emmy, please.
Yes, the Corn Palace is obviously our biggest staple. As one show on Discovery actually interviewed one of our Mitchell residents, and he did classify it as the world's largest bird feeder. It actually becomes an interesting conversation when you are talking to our local tourists that do come in. I've learned that as a server. It makes for very, very interesting conversation. You would direct people to other avenues on top of the Corn Palace as well. And yes, I do believe that city funding could be helped to incorporate and entice some events to come into our town to possibly make it, you know, a fun environment for everyone.
Mr. Goldammer, please.
Absolutely. I think everyone's pretty much on board with the Corn Palace being a cornerstone of Mitchell. And I think that if the Corn Palace needed help, subsidizing it's something the city should do. However, I think that as a city council member, as a citizen of Mitchell, we should do everything we can to support the Corn Palace. And that would include asking them to be fiscally responsible and try and get to a balanced budget. I don't know that that's ever a feasible option with an event space like that. However, I think we should work with Scott and see what options we have to bring more revenue to the space. As someone who works in an events space right across the street, it's very difficult to generate funds and even power the building. Our electric bill across the street at the community theater is something like $1,200 a month. I can't imagine what the Corn Palace is. So we absolutely need to do everything we can to support it.
Mr. Sabers, please.
On the on far as the Corn Palace and the $400 budget, that's part of the interview. That was one of my questions. And I said, well, it's impossible to balance a budget. You know, there's at that time they were losing about 400,000 a year. I said, there's two ways you can do it, and I don't think they'll go over. I said, you know, it's free admission. Right? If you have 200,000 to 400,000 people come in, you charge $3, you can balance it. Well, that's not a possibility. And our number one renter, you know, is in a joint use. So our number one renter is not paying rent, which is, you know, the city gets, you know, in the joint use, each get halfway. So 400,000 is a good investment. When people talk about Mitchell, they talk about the Corn Palace. We're making new flyers at the Ramada Inn. We're doing the 1921 version. We're doing the before the remodel and after, and all three of them are going to be on our flyers that we send out. So Corn Palace is Mitchell, and we need to keep it up. And you know, and the 400,000 is what we're going to have to pay.
Mr. Loneman, please.
We've been having a lot of discussions over the last 2 years about the Corn Palace, and the conclusion that I've come to is people come yearly to see our murals. I've had multiple conversations with tourists, and I've seen the same tourists every year. And so what we can see about that is they come every year. It's not something they come see once and they never come back. You know, it's something that is a staple in our community, and it keeps people coming back. That's why we surround everything that we do in Mitchell around the Corn Palace. Like, for example, it might be a coincidence that the school district uses a corn cob as our mascot, but I don't find it to be too big of a coincidence because we have a giant building covered with corn in the center of Mitchell. We bring media attraction to Mitchell, whether it be joking media through Comedy Central or Discovery Channel, which, you know, we're the largest bird feeder. I think the biggest part about it is it's a vibrant part of Main Street, and that we have surrounded our entire city around and our school district around and everything. So why wouldn't we spend the money to make it happen?
Billy, please.
What would be on your city project wish list?
Ms. Emmy, please.
My wish list is, like I said, to bring activities to our community to involve everyone, no matter on financial status. You know, I'm actually having to literally pick and choose on what my kids can go into because of the funding. Ultimately, it's one of these things where I'm going to listen to my ward. I'm going to be the open ears and be the voice of our ward.
Mr. Goldhammer, please.
Absolutely. When I decided to run for city council, the first thing I did was email all the different department heads throughout the city and ask them not only what was successful in their programs, but also what could use work. And there was a couple things that I found really interesting in the responses, one of which was the chief of police and fire safety said to me that we need to figure out something to deal with response times as far as fire calls go, that the north side of town doesn't necessarily have the best response time at this point. And so figuring out a way to address that. I also think that, you know, nobody wants to put their rubber stamp of approval on a water infrastructure plan. But as Kevin said at the beginning, our infrastructure needs work underground, and we need to put some dollars there. As far as an outdoor amenity that I think our city could use, we have a nice new green space outside the Corn Palace that I would love to see turned into an ice rink during the winter months when the green space isn't necessarily used for any other purpose. So thank you.
Mr. Sabers, please.
I don't really have a wish list. Probably the number one thing is I've heard there's 15 to 20 miles of pipe that needs to be redone. And so it's probably the biggest thing that I see a need for. And then after the last couple of years is the infrastructure. Getting it fixed, finding out a way to pay for it. Very expensive. You know, now we started with the on Sanborn, and, you know, so you're doing 6 blocks a year. You know, you start taking that many miles, but probably the number one priority I don't know if that's a wish list, is the infrastructure.
Mr. Loneman, please.
I think something that I've been talking about since I first ran for city council was the need for, like Tim said, the response times on the northern side of the city, just adding fire personnel, adding school resource officers to our city, as I stated in an article in October, improving infrastructure. You know, that's something that we don't think about as a part of public safety, is the water main breaks that go on and all of these water issues that we have with the piping underneath the city. It's a huge public safety issue, especially if a huge water main break happens, then takes, you know, a half of the city out of water. You know, that's a huge issue. The Northern Fire Department thing is something I've discussed before. We're short on fire personnel a lot. At times, there's only 5 people covering the fire department. When 2 need to cover the ambulance and 3 need to cover the fire truck, there should be 7. There's 3 police officers on duty sometimes 2, and that would surprise a lot of people. And I think something we need to focus on is planning for the future, like I just started talking about.
Mr. McCardle, please.
I think infrastructure is number one that we need to work on, or be on the wish list. Finishing Sanborn Street would be another one that I would say would be a high priority. Lake Mitchell and Main Street. I was out the other day on Raleigh Street going door to door in South Raleigh. I went to a house and the guy, he was talking about rusty water. And I said, "What do you mean rusty water?" He went and got a glass of water and brought it out and showed it to me. And it looked like he dipped it out of the lake. I mean, we can't have people in our town with having water like that. I mean, I have good water. They should have good water. Everybody should have the same. So we need to work on the infrastructure as the number one thing. Finish the Sanborn Street, like I said, because that street is in dire need of repair. The Main Street, if we could get businesses down there, I don't know how we're going to do it, but hopefully we can figure something out. And Lake Mitchell is another issue we need to work on.
JP, please.
Studies have shown that cities with high drug or crime have little community programs or community support. Do you think Mitchell has this problem? And do you think Mitchell could do more to prevent this problem?
Mr. Goldemmer, please.
I guess I don't necessarily know the statistics to back this up, but I feel like whenever I look at the police blog or the police blurb in the Daily Republic, it seems like there are certainly a higher percentage number of drug problems that go on in the city. And so putting the support to that, I think, is important. I do know that I've worked with the Alcohol, Drug, and Task Force that the city does have, and they do a great job of not only, as far as someone who's worked in the bar industry goes, as training and supporting those individuals in the industry to make sure that they're trained on how to properly handle alcohol, but also to put on information for the city to get information from them and get training on different activities to put themselves in safe places. And so I think if that becomes an issue or is an issue, it's something we certainly need to address.
Mr. Sabers, please.
Can I have that question again?
Studies have shown that cities with high drug or crime have little community programs or community support. Do you think Mitchell has this problem? And do you think Mitchell could do more to prevent this problem?
Mitchell has that problem. And as far as on the programs, I work with a few, you know, and with having apartment houses, I work with the Safe House, you know, stepping stones. We hire some of them people. They come out of there with a very, very high success rate when they graduate. They also come out with a very high rate of returning to their old habits. Everything I've worked with, I'm not very educated on what we all have on that, and everything I see has been pretty successful in my mind.
Mr. Loneman, please.
First of all, I'd like to say that I think that Mitchell does a fairly well job of taking care of the issues and recognizing that they're issues. You know, I've worked in communities, having worked in Charles Mix County, that recognize the issue but refuse to do anything. I think that's an important thing to note. Some of the things that I think the city of Mitchell could do to work on this is fund more school resource officers. Currently, we only have 1 to cover the entire school district. We should probably have about 3 to cover everything, because the officer that we have right now literally runs his tail off between building to building to building on calls and can't really take the time to get to know the students and the issues of the specific schools that he works in. I think overall we probably could use more funding for police officers because, like I said, we could use more police and presence in the city. You know, there are times where we only have 2 police officers on duty in the city, and that would surprise a lot of people in this city, and I think it probably would make a lot of you upset. Supporting DRE programs, such as drug recognition programs, and education towards drug and alcohol would be extremely helpful in this aspect, and I think that's something we can work on.
Mr. McCardle, please.
I do believe in Mitchell, we do have a problem. I talked to Chief Overwig on a regular basis, and Mitchell does have a huge meth problem. And we need to educate the public. I mean, they say once you get hooked on that stuff that it's hard to come off it. And I think with stepping stones, other programs we have, I think I think the police officer that goes to the schools, they do a good job at educating the younger kids. But I think it's the older people that need the education worse than the younger kids do, because there's a big problem in town. You drive around town during the day and you go drive around town at night, and it's a different town because there's a lot of different things going on. And I think that we need to clean it up. I think our police officers do a good job of what they can do, but they just need more resources to help get the problem under control. And I think that we need to do that.
Ms. Emmy, please.
Yes, there is definitely a big problem. I have a very, very open relationship with my 13-year-old daughter, and the amount of stuff that she tells me that's going on in our middle school alone, you wouldn't believe. And I know the schools and the police department and all of our public safety officers are working to better incorporate programs into our schools. That is why it's so important for me to become the leader that I am with my Cub Scouts and my Girl Scouts. They need a positive role influence on their lives. And for me running for city council, this just shows that no matter what you do, you can always put your mind to it. Yeah, you might get turned away, but guess what? You tried. But definitely we do need another resource to go along with our truancy officer. I know him actually on a personal level because he is a troop leader in the Boy Scouts.
Okay, we will now have closing comments, 90 seconds per person, and we will start with Mr. Sabers, please.
If elected, a couple things that naturally the Lake Mitchell would be the top priority. Mitchell Main Street beyond, getting the bid passed and making our Main Street look better. Very, very, very important to me. I think if we make our Main Street look better, it's going to bring more people downtown. You're going to get people that are visiting the Corn Palace. The 6th Street is done. It looks nice. Try to get them to walk up and down the streets. If you have businesses that look better, they're going to want to go there. As far as all of our recreation in town, recreation is for bringing people into town is very good. We got one of the nicest golf courses in town with the new indoor swimming pool. You can't get any nicer than this. Or outdoor swimming pool. You know, it's amazing. You know, hockey. We've addressed everything in sports. The amount of people, especially being in the motel business, that come to this town to support our cafes, our restaurants, our motels on the weekends. The second sheet of ice, it's amazing with Sports Authority. I'm on the board there. What that brings to town is the people it brings to town that leave tax dollars in town. Keeping that up is very, very important to the city of Mitchell. And if elected, naturally I would list the people in the city with my ward and vote according to what my better judgment would be.
Mr. Loneman, please.
I said it last year when I ran first time. If you want to attract young people to Mitchell, you need to have young people leading Mitchell. And I think one of the easiest ways that I can do that is to get elected to city council. Now, I spent a lot of time talking today about public safety and things of that nature. But I think what we really need to focus on here in the future is planning the next decade out. That's something that we haven't done for 20 years. The last time that it came around to do, only the businesses in Mitchell and regional influencers sat down and do it. And the city of Mitchell sat out. And that's something that we can't have happen. I think that the city council needs to be involved with that. And we need to sit down and make a plan for the city of Mitchell, whether it be with Main Street and beyond, whether it be with the Chamber of Commerce, everybody around us, and sit down and make a plan and find out what our priorities are for the next decade and put those on our agenda. we can work on public safety, we can work on the lake, and we can do all of that. And we can also work on an agenda for the future. And that's something that is a wrap I would like to do in my term as city council member.
Mr. McCardle, please.
If elected, as I stated last year when I ran, common sense is what I stand by. I mean, common sense solves 95% of the problems. I mean, you don't need to talk to 15, 20 different people to see how to do something. I mean, most people know common sense and honesty. I've had a lot of people call me through the year. I've returned every single call. I've reached out to whoever I needed to do what I needed to do. I do a lot of research on what we need, different topics that we're discussing in the town. I work for everybody in Mitchell. I don't work for the rich, the poor, the middle class, anybody. I work for the city of Mitchell. I want to see the city of Mitchell become a better place for my kids when they get older, myself when I retire, and everybody else. And I think that we do have a good, for kids, I think we have plenty of parks. We got the rec center. We're going to have the new pool. We have Cadwell Park. There's plenty of things for kids to do in town if they want to get away from their video games and go do things. I keep in constant contact with our department heads. I talk to the chief of police, the Corn Palace director, the park board, the street people, all of them. I mean, you just got to I think you have to talk to the people to find out what their problems are. If you talk to them, they're willing to open up and tell you what we need to do. And that's what we need to do, is talk to our department heads and other people around town to see what people want in Mitchell and try to meet their needs.
Ms. Emmy, please.
If elected, I do agree with Clay. In order to attract the younger, you do need the younger minds, perspectives, ideas. And of course, it's going to be important to incorporate ideas that might attract our nation's youth, our city's youth. It is unbelievable. Actually, yes, okay, we might have parks, we might have the rec center, but how much is the rec center going to cost each family? You know, we've got to think about these things. Now with Thirsties going into the bowling alley, I'm not going to want to send my kids there. I have to admit it. You know, and the ice skating rink, okay, yes, we have that. But what else do we actually have to physically engage these children during the wintertime, when we have more of our months for the winter, not during the summer, not when they can go out to these parks and everything like that. And I see it on a firsthand base. You know, there are quite a few people that like to just drop their kids off. As a Girl Scout leader, I am firsthand knowledge of that one. And it is important to actually interact with our youth in order to make the city better.
Mr. Goldemmer, please.
Absolutely. I think that, I think that infrastructure is a pretty important thing to me. Lake Mitchell is something that I think needs to be voted on by the city public. It's going to be a lot of dollars spent to fix the issue, whatever the solution is. As far as things to do, I think there's a lot of different opportunities for children to be involved. I'm a proud member of the Area Community Theater board president for the last 2 years, and just finished Beauty and the Beast auditions, end of July, first weekend of August. Make sure you come check it out. Helpless plugs. And it's a great place. It's really where I got involved in Mitchell. It's where I became engaged in the city. If it wasn't for my job offer, that's what brought me to Mitchell. That I originally moved to Mitchell because a great job presented itself to me. And so when you talk about different things that draw people, I don't know that it's necessarily young people running city council that'll get people to Mitchell. It's great jobs, great companies. I think that Mitchell has that here. And I think we need to do everything we can to empower those great companies and jobs to stay in place. I think that there's a lot of things to do in Mitchell if you go out and find them to do. Other than that, I really would appreciate your vote on June 5th, and thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Let's give these candidates a hand. We'll take about a 5-minute break to get set up for the mayoral candidates.
And please, we'll keep our stream going during this break time. And again, our mayoral candidates will be up in about 5 minutes. We thank you for joining us tonight online at KORNradio.com. And please stay with us. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with the second half with the mayoral candidates.
Well done.
Do you think I could take? Do you think I could take one of the media's things so they don't have to keep sharing microphones? Do you think the media can share a microphone, or should I just leave it?
I think
I'm sorry.
we have another one.
Really? Really?
I don't know why that wasn't helpful.
That sounds awesome. I'll be there.
Doug's getting one.
Thank you.
I'm all right. Thank you.
If you don't want them on.
Oh, the green's on.
Okay.
So you're missing the legislature at all?
No. No.
We'll resume our candidates forum with the mayoral candidates in just a few minutes. Thank you for standing by.
The car. I didn't know about that.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with the mayoral portion of our forum. I'm not going to go through all the details. I'm just going to remind the candidates that opening remarks are 2 minutes, 60 seconds per question, and then 90 seconds for closing comments. So we will start with Mr. Everson, please.
Good. All right. Thank you for having this forum. My name's Bob Everson. I'm a mechanical engineer. I grew up here in Mitchell. Went to South Dakota State University where I got my degree. After that, I spent a few years in Salt Lake City, Utah, Sheridan, Wyoming, and was fortunate enough to be able to move back here to raise my family. Raised 3 kids. They all graduated from Mitchell High School. I have a wife who was a teacher in the high school system and is now with the Abbott House. I spent 20 plus years on the Mitchell Planning Commission. I'm still on that. I spent 13 plus years on, or roughly 13 years on the Mitchell Park and Rec Board, so I understand what's going on with that organization. I spent a lot of years coaching youth sports in Mitchell, over 20 doing that, so a lot of you may know me from that. I know a lot of kids. In fact, I know a few of these kids that are running here today, so starting to feel a little bit old. Anyway, I'm looking forward to running Mitchell as mayor and I hope you vote for me.
Mr. Larson, please.
Hi, I'm Stephen Larson. Been in Mitchell since third grade, graduated here, class of 2008. You'll notice I'm a bit younger than most everyone that's been running. Mr. Olson was my teacher for a number of years. Great respect for the man. So been here, came back after college, graduated here in 2008, went to Buena Vista University in Storm Lake, Iowa, graduated there in 2013. I ended up coming back. I worked for my dad at a small little company. What we do is industrial data radios, which probably doesn't make sense to any of you, but what it does is I deal with a lot of public utilities across a 7-state region. A lot of involvement with cities, worked with electrical utilities, water utilities, wastewater utilities. We're a small part of what they do, but what I am is exposed to a bunch of their plans of what they do. A lot of involvement with cities with the budget process. And so I've actually been exposed to a bunch of how city works. What I see in Mitchell is a town with great potential, a town that wants to be better, and a community that wants its town to be better. What I think Mitchell needs, what I want to bring is a breath of fresh air to get us moving in the right direction. We need long-term plans. We need plans that span more than a decade. The infrastructure, the pipes that are breaking now, we know the expected life expectancy of those. Cast iron pipes, for instance, 120 years is their life expectancy. These are things that we know when they go on the ground. These are things that we can plan decades out. These are things that should not be surprising us. These are things that I feel should have been accounted for already. And so it's little things like that, making sure that we have a good foundation for this city to grow on, that I want to bring in. Just to look forward, have a plan, execute it, make sure the town has the ability to grow like it wants to. Thank you.
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us. My name's Mel Olson. I've taught in the Mitchell School District for 36 years. I'll be retiring here in 2 weeks, and if elected, I plan to be a full-time mayor. As Terry indicated, I came here for a job, and I got a career, and I got a family. I met my wife, Julie, here. We'll be married 30 years this summer. Have 2 kids grown. One lives in Sioux Falls, and one lives in North Carolina. I've served 9 years on the city council. I was 12 years in the state legislature before that. And so I think I bring some knowledge and experience to the job. I think we have some challenges in Mitchell, and I think they're challenges. I don't think they're problems. I think the lake is a challenge. I think retail in general, in a brick and mortar place, especially on Main Street where buildings are 100 years old in a digital age, I think that's a challenge. I think empty buildings like Casey's, unfortunately, in a few weeks is a challenge. And I think infrastructure is a challenge. And the city does have a plan. The difficulty is those plans are limited by Mother Nature doing things to us, as happened this winter. And it's also limited by funds. And so you can plan all you want, but you have to have the money to carry that forward. The other challenge we have, I think, was identified by Jeff Logan at the meeting the other night. And that is we need to compete for people. We need employees. We need young entrepreneurs that are going to start that next generation of business. So we need to, thank you, we need to do something that will make Mitchell even more accommodating to those plans. So if I'm elected mayor, I hope to work in that direction, and I hope to work with all of you and others who may be listening to come up with solutions to those challenges. Thank you.
Ms. Vlasky.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you, Billy and JP and Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. And I'm running again because, I mean, I've run, I've lost track how many times I've run for office, but I'm not a quitter. I don't give up. And I really believe in this town. And I think I could be the best person to lead this town in the direction it should be going. If you got a card, well, first of all, I'll tell you a little about my background. I'm a graduate of Brigham Young University. I was born and raised in Mobridge, played on the golf team, played on women's professional tour on the West Coast and in Japan. Then I came back and I worked for Huron University. That was back in the 80s. I was their #1 recruiter for 6 years in a row. So I know how to recruit. I would know how to recruit jobs. I would know how to recruit young people to stay here because I got a background in higher education and I worked with kids, younger people, a lot. And I love recruiting businesses. I mean, you go to Jimmy John's. I'm the one that made that phone call and said, hey, come on up here. And I can do that. And I feel comfortable doing that because I would be a mayor that likes to visit with people and listen to people and make a phone call. We've got an empty mall almost on the north end of town, and somebody's got to call the owner and say, hey, will you work with us? And I'd love to work with the Development Corporation to bring in good jobs and see what we could do for Main Street, because I think the small businesses should have the same kind of treatment that the big corporations get in town, such as TIFs and loans, ready loans. So I'm ready to go on day one.
Billy, please.
Good evening, candidates. What do you think the city can do to help revitalize downtown Mitchell?
Mr. Larson, please.
So downtown Mitchell is a complex problem, as most everything is. There's been a lot of talk of bringing younger people to town. And downtowns tend to be populated by the younger crowds that tend to go out. But also a lot of downtown right now, it's kind of a cycle that doesn't have a start, but it definitely has a stop. You need to have a nightlife, people shopping after hours, but in order to have that, you have to have stores open later. And so what the city can do as part of that problem is just to improve the atmosphere. If we make it more attractive, businesses will want to go down there, people will want to go down there as well. We have to bring the two together. What the city can do is facilitate that. The bid is one possible solution for that. I think it's a step in the right direction. It's going to take a lot of work. This didn't die overnight, nor can we resurrect it as fast. It's going to be something that we'll have to work with the community, see what they want in downtown, what they want to bring there, and what the businesses are willing to put down there. Thanks.
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, I think there are a number of things. The bid obviously is one thing. The city can continue to beautify downtown, as was done largely through the efforts of Dan Allen and Chief Overwig with the Veterans Park, with the help of the entire community. I think all of us, including the city of Mitchell, need to buy local. And then to Steve's point, we could, in the evening hours, have foot patrol downtown so that people are a little more comfortable. We have the officers driving around, but a foot patrol, I think, would add a certain level of visibility and comfort to folks, hopefully shopping downtown, but whatever they might be doing.
Ms. Valesky, please.
Thank you. 6 years ago, when I ran for mayor, I ran on Main Street, and you can check the record. All you have to do is Google Tara Valesky, Daily Republic, and Main Street, and about the plaza. That was my idea. And you can look at the timeline on there. I had Randy Fisher, who did Brookings Main Street, come to Mitchell, spent a couple hours with me, and he's the one that checked out the Corn Palace and the rink, ice rink. You can check that out too in the paper. I was all for the ice rink. And I worked with Dr. Rex, Brian Rex from South Dakota State University, Department of Architecture. I had them all set up with 47 architectural students to do Main Street for us. That was 6 years ago. It's on record. Is it time? Oh, stop. Okay.
Mr. Everson, please.
Well, I think we've kind of started with that with Mitchell Main Street and beyond, and they're working hard on trying to get things done. We saw a little bit of a setback in this council meeting last Monday when a lot of their work kind of got thrown out the window for a short period of time. Hopefully they can continue to work on getting Main Street improvements done, and it will help rejuvenate downtown. You know, we're doing stuff on the Friday night get-togethers. I think that will help. And I think that will also help bring younger people in, you know, if we can get some of that rejuvenation done. So, and we're also working with Buxton, I believe is the name, to try and figure out what people are spending their money on here as well as other places, and what might be a benefit to bring into Mitchell.
JP, please.
Thank you. What are your thoughts regarding the preliminary findings of FIRA as they apply to the Lake Mitchell Improvement Project?
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, I think part of the problem is we don't really have a lot of preliminary findings. They found that there's phosphorus, and roughly half the problem is in the lake and half the problem is in the watershed. And so I think it's going to be very important politically that we do something with the lake immediately, because you cannot ask people to spend the kind of money we're talking about spending over decades to fix the watershed first. Now, the watershed is going to have to be addressed, but that's going to take state and federal cooperation as well. So I think what we need to do is we need to engage the public. We need to hear the final findings from FIRA coming up in a month. And then we need to move together as the general public. And I think, excuse me, I think a public vote would help facilitate that to coming up with hopefully a permanent solution to the lake.
Ms. Waleski, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, I have attended every meeting, and I just listened to the FIRA engineer. They were here, what, a couple of days ago, and talking to the committee. And I'll tell you what, it was such a, I mean, he couldn't answer questions. I mean, Mr. Kippis asked some direct questions, and he just kept beating around the bush. And when you're going to spend tens of millions of dollars and they're not going to guarantee it, something's not right. I believe in a second opinion or a third opinion, and I have the two people that will do talk to the people about RFP, and it won't cost a dime. So we need to look at other alternatives and get the lake cleaned this summer. Because with the one alternative, I will guarantee that lake will be clean.
Mr. Everson, please.
Well, we really don't have much in the way of preliminary findings from FIRA. It's the whole situation, in my opinion, could have been handled a little bit better than what it was. We're waiting for them now to come forward with preliminary findings, which should help us determine what kind of budget we're looking at. Where we're going to get that money, we don't know. I mean, that is obviously something that's not budgeted, so that has to be looked at. What the end results of the preliminary study show us, we don't know. It could be anywhere from 500,000 cubic to 2 million cubic yards of material. There's a lot of things that we have to figure out before we can do anything. I think we're a long ways from getting any solutions done on the lake, unfortunately. It would be nice to have a magic wand and wave that thing over and have it done by the end of this summer. I would love to have that, but we're a ways out. We got to find funding for the things that they tell us we need to do, and we're just waiting to see what their preliminary report tells us.
Mr. Larson, please.
Whenever the lake comes up, I think it's important to remember that we are dealing with a lake that was created almost 90 years ago. Almost exactly 90 years ago at this point. It has been going downhill since day one. This is not a new problem. This is not something that occurred overnight. It may have increased its rate of descent, but this is nothing new. What we are dealing with is a 90-year-old problem. This problem has never been effectively addressed. We have tried to put Band-Aids on it. We have tried little things here and there, but nothing has ever been truly effective. I think FIRA has done a very good job of defining our problem. We always knew we had a problem. It was fairly evident that it was a phosphorus problem. What we have now is a very well-defined phosphorus problem that we can actually take action on. You need to have elements that you can study, things that you can actually measure in order to actually measure success of a solution. And so this is the first small step towards that. And while I don't know if they will give us an absolute concrete plan, what they have given us is something that we can actually work with and a foundation to build a solution on.
Billy, please.
What traits do you possess, and what in your experience would make you a good mayor for Mitchell?
Ms. Waleski, please.
Well, I think I have very good leadership qualities. I was captain of all the sports teams I participated in, and the captain of Brigham Young University women's golf team. And I just, it's kind of innate. You either have it or you don't. And I like to get things done. And also I have a mediation certification from the University of North Dakota. So I'm able to listen to people or both sides. And I believe in, visiting with these people. I don't think these farmers have been talked to on a personal level, or these people that own businesses downtown. I mean, a lot of these owners, they live in Minneapolis or Sioux Falls, and I'd be more than happy to call them on the phone or make a trip, visit with them. I mean, I had Steve Metley all lined up to come, and well, he passed away, but he did the falls to the Phillips to the Falls in Sioux Falls. So I think you have to talk to people that really know what they're, surround yourself with intelligent. Oh, sorry. Okay. I could go on and on.
Mr. Everson, please.
I'm a leader. I spent 4 years in the military. I rose in rank very rapidly with the ability to lead people. I'm an engineer. There's not a lot of gray in my life. I either see it as black and white, and I'm able to think through situations and come to solutions. You know, as an engineer, I've managed projects, multi-million-dollar projects as they were constructed, you know, overseeing how the projects get built and keeping them within budgets. So I've dealt with budgets. I understand staying within a budget. You know, it's just overall leadership qualities and the ability to manage people.
Mr. Larson, please.
I think what I bring to the table is a lot of critical thinking, the ability to look at a problem, see where we are, and find out where we need to be. The trick is finding the path there, the best way to do it, and the way to get everyone on board. I think everyone wants to fix problems that this town's face, and a big part of that is actually communicating the information. If you bring people the facts, they will agree with you, they'll get on board, but a lot of it is proper communication, getting the information out there. I've worked with large projects, I've worked with the water utilities, designing projects from the get-go. We talk to them, we say, what do you want to do? What do you need to do? How can we get you there? And so it evolves from that, and it's the same with the troubleshooting process. You look at the facts, you know, figure out what you know first, figure out what you don't know, how you can figure out what you don't know. Take all of that into account, and then find the path forward. I think it's a bunch of critical thinking and ability to communicate and work with others well.
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and I've got a temper like everybody else, and I've lost it a time or two, but overall, I think I bring common sense and common decency. In a 20-year career in the city council and in the state legislature, I've had the opportunity to listen to people and to disagree with people without being disagreeable. I've had an opportunity to work with the city council, and most of them will be the same as we move forward for whoever the new mayor is. I've had the opportunity to work with city officials. I think I understand the problems of the city. I think I understand what is doable and what's not doable. I think I understand what needs to be done. And hopefully I have the communication skills to bring that to the people of Mitchell and persuade them that this course of action is what needs to be done, this money needs to be spent, and this is why, and bring people along.
JP, please.
Along those lines, what are your thoughts in running city council meetings more efficiently while keeping a civil tone and conducting business?
Mr. Everson, please.
Well, I think it's important to have a level head or, you know, good attitude as you go into it. Tempers, there's no place for tempers in that meeting or in city council meetings. You know, you need to think through what's happening and be civil with all, whether they oppose you or they're with you, or in fact, the mayor is only the tie-breaking vote. So it's important for the mayor to understand both sides and form his own opinion on those sides. The mayor needs to guide the meeting, lead it along, and make sure that tempers don't flare and things stay in an even keel and run smoothly.
Mr. Larson, please.
So in terms of running meetings efficiently, there's efficiently and there's rushed. And so I think city council meetings need to take the proper time to discuss issues and keep it on track, keep it on topic. You have to respect everyone's time, especially the community members who are absolutely not getting paid. They are there because they care. And it's important to respect everyone's time. As Mr. Olson said, you need to be able to disagree with people. And anymore, it's a seemingly lost art to be able to disagree with someone but still respect them. I think it comes down largely to respect for time, respect for people, and respect for the opinions. As long as you have a respect for the person, you can listen to what they're saying, appreciate it, and still disagree. Some of my favorite people to talk with, I agree with on rare occasion. One of my favorite college professors, we counted on one hand how many times we agreed. I had him for an entire semester. We agreed 5 times. He was one of my favorite teachers, but we had the basic respect to talk civilly, and I think that would be important.
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, I think the meetings are run very efficiently, to tell you the truth. We have the consent calendar that speeds up procedural things. I think the quote unquote inefficiency comes exactly where Steve is talking about, where you're giving the public an opportunity to express their opinion. And I just don't think you can rush that. There have been times when I've been tremendously surprised at the controversy that something that didn't seem all that controversial generated. And then other times where I was prepared for a long discussion on an issue I thought was tremendously important and nobody bothered. So I think you have to give the public the opportunity to express themselves. And the bid thing that we had on Monday is a perfect example. We were ready to move forward with the bid brought forward by Main Street leaders, but state law says if there's a dispute, you can't do that. Well, each side had their day, and we had to follow state law and put it on hold. People may think that's inefficient, but there are times when state law intervenes. There are times when you have to let people have their say on a particular controversial issue, and it seems inefficient.
Ms. Vlaski, please.
Okay, well, I think you guys run a really good meeting. I mean, I've been there many times. I've been able to go up. They've been very kind, very nice to me when I come up and did public opinion or made some statements. And I'll tell you what, we're very good. If you want some entertainment, go tune in to Sioux Falls. I mean, they've had to have cops take out people. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. It's like Animal House. I mean, and they really do express themselves. But I wouldn't see it. I don't see any problem. And I would, as mayor, I would get along great with the city council, and I'd really communicate with them. I'd meet with them, and we would be, we could have our differences, and that's good. But I don't see any problem with the way things are run right now.
Billy, please.
In what ways do you feel the city could be run more efficiently?
Mr. Larson, please.
So I think this comes back to the long-term plan and having the way forward. The city, from what I've seen, has done a fairly good job with what we have, but the city has, in my opinion, coasted for a while on what has been done. With the amount of pipe in the ground, by my estimates, we need to replace approximately about a mile a year in order to keep up with that. And so you can do things in large bites or you can do things in small bites. And generally, I prefer to do things in small bites when it's maintenance. It's much easier to maintain something, to take the time to actually take care of it, than it is to rip it out and just completely replace it. And sometimes that is the maintenance, but a small part of the system instead of a large one. And so I think the largest efficiency that the city could gain is simply having the long-term view to take nibbles of these big problems before they become so large that we have to bite off more than we can comfortably chew at one time.
Mr. Olson, please.
Well, I think the city is pretty efficient, to tell you the truth. We really have not had employee growth. When we lose an employee, either because they move on to someplace else or they retire, we, the city, take the opportunity to look at that position and reclassify it or get rid of it or move it somewhere else in order to be more efficient. You look at snow removal, good gracious, those 16 inches that dumped on us. The street department got rid of that in record time. If you went over to Sioux Falls, they still had windrows and things in the middle of the road. So obviously there's waste in every organization. Obviously there's things that could be done better in every organization, but we have to understand that people run this. And for example, when you go past a construction crew in the summer and it's 100 degrees, understand they're going to have to take some time to have some water and sit in the shade. They're not going to be able to work 24/7 to get your particular project done.
Ms. Vlaski, please.
Yeah, I think the city could be much more efficient, but I'm very fiscally conservative. I'd have to look at the budget, and I think we need to think outside the box. We can't be doing the same thing we've been doing over and over again and getting the same results. That Corn Palace should not be in the red. We should actually be making money. I called Wall Drug. I've talked to them twice, and they get over 2 million people a year to see that place. And I mean, it hasn't changed in 50 years. And you know how they do it? Nickel coffee and free ice water. Well, how about a free popcorn ball? then, you know, you get 4 kids in the car. One gets a free popcorn ball, and then the other kids will go, well, hey, I want a popcorn ball too. Well, then you just sold 3 more. Now, that doesn't cost a lot of money to do that at all. And I think you're going to find out that you're going to see a lot more people coming off the interstate. Thank you.
Mr. Everson, please.
I think for the most part, the city runs fairly efficiently. A couple things that I've noticed since I've started running in this position, and one is procurement policies. I think we need to work on having a uniform procurement policy for things such as the hiring of consultants similar to FIRA. I think that would benefit all the departments within the city. No micromanagement. I think you hired department heads to run their positions, and they should run them and do their job, and nobody standing over them. So those are the things that I would see.
Okay, we will go to closing comments. I will remind you 90 seconds per person, please. And we will start with Mr. Olson.
Well, the first thing I would say is democracy belongs to people who show up, and government responds to people who get involved. And so I would encourage all of you, no matter who you're voting for, to get out and vote on June the 5th. We have problems, we have challenges, but it's nothing that we cannot solve together, and together is the key. And so I guess I would say to people who are involved in the community, whether they be involved on something like the Lake Committee handling a really big issue, or whether they be involved in a community organization like the Shriners that brings a crowd-pleasing circus to town every year, I would say thank you. And we cannot run without those people, which means we cannot run without the businesses that employ them. The city cannot run without the sales tax and the property tax, and depending on the business, the entertainment tax that those businesses generate. So it's important for all of us to be involved in the community, either by buying our goods and services in the committee or serving in the community, serving on various committees. And if it's going to be us and them, we will fail every time. If it's us working against a problem for a solution, we will be successful every time, and that's the kind of mayor I would like to be.
Ms. Volesky.
Well, thank you. I had a fun evening tonight, but I didn't get enough time to say what I really would like to say. So I rented out the senior center for May 24th for a town hall meeting and no time cards. So at 11:30, you know, you can have lunch with the seniors, and everybody's invited, not just seniors, young people, people from the lake can come. This is going to be a big town hall. And I'll tell you what, I will even invite the other candidates here. Okay.
I'm giving semester tests.
Oh, you are? Oh, shoot. Well, good. But anyway, because this is a very critical election. I mean, you're dealing with millions of dollars. Main Street is, you know, we've got to do something with Main Street. We've got to keep our young kids here. We've got, you know, Dakota Wesleyan, MTI, and we need to work. I would work with those colleges for entrepreneurs. I had a gal private message me yesterday and said, hey, how can I start up a business in town? So, and I want to get involved in that, and we can do so much. And I'll tell you what, if when I win that mayor's race, we're going to take a busload of people and a caravan, and I'm going to show you a clean lake, because I have to have proof. And this lake, I guarantee you, will be clean this summer.
Mr. Everson, please.
Well, I have to echo what Mel said. The important thing here is to get out and vote. June 5th comes around, and people need to vote and get out and vote for whomever you're going to do it. I hope it's for me. I think Mitchell's a great place to live and raise a family. I moved back here, and I've loved it. I loved growing up here. I've always told my wife, if we ever get a chance to come back to Mitchell, we want to do that. I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my life here. Hope it's long. I'm a project manager. I've spent my life as an engineer managing large projects, so I could handle managing this city without any problem. I know budgets. I understand staying within the constraints of budgets. And I look forward to leading the city of Mitchell in the future in the right path or down forward direction.
Mr. Larson, please.
Just want to reiterate kind of everything that showed up in all my answers is that I'm looking forward, I'm looking to the future. This has been a great town. I grew up in it. I didn't claim it as a hometown right away. I moved to a few different places, but anymore, this is my home. Mitchell has become where I want to be. It's become where I want to stay. I have 2 nieces and a nephew. They are young right now. I want them to want to stay here. And I think we can make Mitchell a town that young people want to stay in. I think our industries have done a great job of that, and they've brought jobs for the younger crowd, for my generation. And I think the industries continue to grow. It's something that we should support. We always need to keep an eye to the future while minding the present. And so it's a matter of looking forward, knowing where we want to go, but enjoying where we are. Mitchell is in a pretty good place. We're doing well. I think we can do better. I think we should do better. But it's building on what we already have. It's remembering our history, remembering that this town has been around since well before I was born. It will be around well after I am gone. And we can do our part to make this town enjoyable, to bring it into the future and to bring the future generations into a town worth staying in. Thanks.
Please help me give these candidates a round of applause.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight. I'd also like to thank Billy and JP from the media. Thank Mitchell Technical Institute for the use of their facility. Thank you, KRN, for live streaming. I'd like to remind you that you may vote absentee from 8 to 5 in the auditor's office. Polls are open 7 to 7, June 5th. Please get out and vote. Thank you.
And thank you once again for joining us online this evening.